David Cross. I'm a research associate here at the Entomology Building at Mississippi State University. And I want to introduce you to an emerging pest ant that's come into the southern U.S. in the last, actually showed up in Florida in the 1950s, but just 20 years ago, it moved into Texas, and in just those 20 years, it's spread to 25 to 30 counties in there, and it's become a really big problem. A lot of the homeowners are really upset, and even NASA had to call the pest control people to have somebody come and take care of it. This talk was about the Tawny Crazy Ant, or Nylandaria fulva. And in Texas, it was first noticed in a big way by a pest control operator with the last name of Raspberry. So they called it the Raspberry Crazy Ant for the longest time. You know, it looks crazy. It moves really erratically, and it's just like if it's in a really high population area and you stick your hand down, it just instantly your hand is covered with ants. And they may not sting, but it's not a pleasant feeling to have all those ants on. It came from a part of South America, where like southern Brazil, northern Argentina, and it's sort of like this devil's triangle for a lot of invasive ants that we get in this country. We've also had two other major pests that came from there, the Argentine ant and the imported fire ant complex. There's two species of imported fire ants. When they come in, they also are in a new environment. In their native range, they had a lot of, they evolved with a lot of different insects all together. You know, they have the competitors, they have predators that feed on them, and diseases that are specific to those ants. And when they come to a new place, they no longer have that. So there's these checks and balances have been cut off. They're also part of the environment, and they push out all these other insects, you know, especially the ants. And you know, inside of the ecological system like that, you know, ants are probably something else's food. And so now you don't have those native ants, and you have these really nasty competitive ants, and so you're upsetting all sorts of things. And a lot of that stuff we're still trying to work out about what's happening. Yeah. So one good thing about these ants is that they can't spread quite as quickly as some ants, because the new queens don't fly during a mating flight. So normally you'd have the males and females go up in the air and they'd mate, and the queen would be able to fly as far as she wants to start a new colony. But instead, for whatever reason, here in the U.S., she does not fly. The males will fly, but she'll have to walk to a new place to start a new colony, and the males will find her and they'll start. If they're lucky, they get picked up by humans and they'll be taken to a new area, and that's how they really spread. They may be picked up in a potted plant or in some kind of shipping materials, or even a camper trailer or somebody's boat. They could end up in a whole new state that way. And that's probably how a lot of this spread has happened, especially if you get those ants from Florida into Texas. One important thing about these ants is they don't sting, you know, unlike fire ants. And so their big secret weapon is their chemical arsenal. They produce a lot of formic acid and other toxins that they use. And they make like more than 1,000 times the normal amount of formic acid that they would find in ants that are related to them. And they also make a lot of these contact poisons that are also very deadly. You know, a guy in Texas named Ed LeBrun, he wanted to see how these ants competed with each other. You know, like, so he put fire ants and Tawny Crazy Ants in the same arena, these little battle arenas, to see how they would do. And if the numbers of Tawny Crazy Ants are high enough, they actually outcompete and can drive away the fire ants, even killing them sometimes. So you'll see the imported fire ants waving their abdomens with a little droplet of poison, and they'll apply it to the crazy ants, and the crazy ants just kind of rub it off and keep going. We want to ask the question of, we definitely have these Tawny Crazy Ants in the country, but where are they going to go? I mean, how far can they spread? Are there some kind of natural limits about where they can go and where they can't? And given where they came from, they came from a part of South America that is sort of warm, temperate to semi-tropical. It's like even a little warmer than South Mississippi, more like South Florida type temperatures where it rarely would freeze. So a logical limit for that would be the temperature, so where you have freezing temperatures. So we need to test that, and the best way to do that is to bring in lots of ants into the lab where we can control the conditions. So I need like several hundred ants to be able to try some experiments on. My normal way to collect ants is to use one of these mouth aspirators. So you suck in air through there, and it pulls the ants through this tube into a small vial in here. But because these ants have such a great chemical arsenal, when they are disturbed, they get alarmed and they start emitting all those chemicals, and it ends up in my mouth. So I started getting this really strong burning sensation in my mouth and the back of my throat, and my salivary glands really kick in, and it's like I'm a mad dog or something frothing at the mouth there. And the next day I'd have these horrible sinus headaches. So this tool is not going to get it. So I have to find something else. And I looked at commercially available aspirators, and either they were way too strong and they were going to hurt my ants, or they just weren't good enough to be able to pick up ants off of rough surfaces where I'd find them out in the wild. So I decided to come up with my own design. So here's one that I devised, and it's made from the fan from a little bilge blower. I think you can see the little propellers up in there. And then I stuck on some other odds and ends, and so you turn it on, and air gets sucked down into here, and it pulls the air through the screen, and then there's a suction at the end of this tube, and you can actually get in pretty close and suck up ants, and they'll be collected in here, and you can dump them into your collecting container. And so by using this, I don't have to get sick every time I collect ants, and I could get several hundreds. As many as you can find on the ground, you can suck up a good number of them. And so that solved that problem. So I have the ants. So now the problem is, okay, I looked on the internet and I found some other researchers had already developed some ant diet. So I found a way to feed the ants. Okay, so now we have the ants, and we want to go ahead and find out, how much a limit is temperature. So we devised a way to subject the ants to freezing temperatures. So we put some holes in this aluminum block so we could stick little vials in there. So we'll fill maybe up to 15 or 20 ants per vial and stick them in the block. And the block helps spread the temperature, in a very nice even way. And so we actually would stick this inside of a freezer at different places in the freezer for different temperatures. And we monitor the temperature. We subjected them for like over 10 hours at a shot where we put them in the freezer, and we slowly, by packing this with insulation, we slowly let the temperature go down so it's not like a big shock. And the temperature would go, well, first we thought the freezing temperature would kill them right away, but we found that wasn't true, that actually you could go to like -4 degrees C, and you still have a good number of ants still being able to, they kind of come out of this torpor. They look like they're kind of drunk at first, but then they'll wake up and they can crawl on and do their own business. So that was a big surprise, because we didn't think normally they'd be subjected to those kind of temperatures in their native environment. But it might be some kind of side effect from some other thing about their body chemistry. We don't know exactly why. It gives us some idea what they physically can withstand. But the other thing is, so we want to look at the behavior of the ant, because we know in the natural environment there are places like in a rotting log or in the composting leaf litter, you get some heat generated from the metabolic action of the organisms in there. So it's going to be slightly warmer than like the soil temperature around it or the air temperature. So does the ant know to go to the warmer place, or is it just going to be subjected to whatever is around it? So we wanted to look at the ant behavior and find a way to test that. We set up another experiment where we would have identical boxes where we'd have food and water and all the good things for the ants in there. But one box would be at a temperature that's kind of uncomfortable for the ants, and then under the other one, we'd stick a little heating pad under the second one, so it's a few degrees warmer. So we'd have a heating pad under this second box, and the ants have the ability to cross from one box to the other through this tubing. So they can choose to go from one to the other depending on what they're wanting. And so we wanted to see if they can sense the different temperature, and also if they would preferentially go to the warm spot. And they did. They're pretty smart ants. So they would go to where it was better for them, because they're not generating a lot of heat. They're not like us. So they're pretty much going to be at the temperature of the environment they're in. So we needed to find a way to go back to the field and see if they really are going to do that. I wanted to find a way to kind of census where the ants are in the environment, at a micro level. So say I went online and I found another researcher had looked at where ants are within the soil. So say your soil level is here, and she would set this trap down in the ground and bait these different sections of the trap. And if you look at these little holes, they pass through into the inner part of the trap. And so if you have ants, say at this bottom section, this is like about 45 centimeters beneath the surface, they pass into here and be feeding on the food, and you may come along and you can collect this. So you just slide this part out and twist it like an eighth of a turn, and now the holes no longer line up. So the ants are trapped into different sections of the trap here. And so we can count the number of ants that we find at these different levels in the ground, or maybe inside of a rotten log if you wanted to put it there. And we can set another little tube next to it and record the temperature at these different sections as well. And so that's what I'm doing now, is I'm manufacturing these traps to go out and test in the field to see where the ants are, if they ever even go down that deep, like in the soil, and if at times when it's really hot maybe, or really cold, if they're avoiding those extremes by preferentially going to those different levels. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing some of the tools that we use to try to answer this even basic questions about the biology of this kind of exciting pest ant, the Tawny Crazy Ant.